We reference the television series Smallville a lot around here, and there's one Smallville rewatch podcast that's always at the top of my queue. Always Hold On to Smallville, hosted by our pal, Zach Moore. Zach and his guests bring tremendous insight, passion, and humor as they discuss each and every episode of the series that ushered in the renaissance of superhero TV. Listen to Always Hold On to Smallville wherever you get podcasts, and keep an eye out for the other shows under the Always Hold On to banner, including Arrow, DC's Legends of Tomorrow, Superman and Lois, and Star Wars. Aw Yeah Comics celebrates and promotes everything that is wonderful about comics, toys, artwork, and the joy they bring to people. Visit them in person at one of their 3 locations: Harrison, New York, aka my local comic shop, Skokie, Illinois, or Muncie, Indiana. If you have kids and have been looking for a family-friendly store, look no further. Join Aw Yeah for exciting events, including creator signings, how-tos, and more. Visit awyeahcomics.com and follow Aw Yeah on social media for more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Say it with me now. Aw yeah. Fat Moose Comics is New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store. Established in 1982 and under new ownership since 2020, Moose sells a wide selection of comics from every publisher and time period, along with action figures, graphic novels, posters, statues, and more. If you're looking for something and they don't have it, they can probably get it for you. They know a guy. Visit Fat Moose in Whippany the next time you're in the Garden State, and be sure to reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. Filmmakers and movie fans alike should be sure to attend these film festivals: Brightside Tavern in Jersey City, Hang On to Your Shorts in Asbury Park, Point Lookout on Long Island, and Round Reel in Bloomfield, New Jersey. Take it from an alum of 2 of them. Submission information for filmmakers, as well as details about the festivals, can be found at filmfreeway.com. Follow the festivals on social media for news about events, discounts, tickets, and more. Also, listen to the Hang On to Your Shorts and Cullen on Film podcasts, available via a shared universe network. In the 1950s, George Reeves embodied the Man of Steel in Superman's first television adaptation. From its gritty black and white beginnings to the kid-friendly color years, to this day, an entire generation reveres George as their Superman, while for others, the show remains an overlooked chapter in the character's mythology. On this podcast, we bring everyone together as we break down each episode of Adventures of Superman. Welcome to another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss Season 2, Episode 22, Jimmy Olsen, Boy Editor, is the host of From Crisis to Crisis, The Married Years, a Superman and Lois podcast, returning guest, Michael Bailey. Welcome back.
Is this all a dream, or is it actually happening, Anthony? Is this episode is this episode actually happening? I think it is.
I think it is, but I guess we'll find out at the end. We'll find out when we wake up. When we wake up tomorrow, if the calendar says today's date, we'll know it was all just a dream.
I set it up. You knocked it down. Very good, sir.
So this was an interesting one. This aired February 13th, 1954, written by David Chandler, directed by Tommy Carr. And we talked the last time you were here. I know the ones where we sort of deviate from the norm a little bit and spotlight some of our other characters like Perry, like Jimmy. I know those are some of the ones that jump out at you. And this was one of the ones that you opted to join me for here in Season 2. I guess I know I'm changing the order a little bit because normally I'd go through the whole rundown first, but what were your overall impressions of this one?
This one was hard to get through. I feel bad saying that because I know we're trying to celebrate the series, but as you well know, you can have a favorite show, and there's episodes that don't hit you as well as others. I mean, it's like my favorite season of Lois and Clark, for example, is the first season, but then you have Pheromone My Lovely, and you're just like, that's not as good as the other episodes. This is definitely one of those where it felt like the script wasn't fully baked. Like they had an idea and then they had to extend and it looked like they were struggling to keep the plot going. Like they had a plot that didn't fit 26 minutes, but they somehow made it do that. And because of that, it was kind of like, I don't usually check how much more in the episode there is, but on this one, I kept hitting my phone and looking at that time.
1,000%. So Normally I read my summary all the way through, but I want to just read the first part and then get your take, and then we'll go through the rest of it. So narration plays over an unusual scene of Jim Olsen giving Perry orders from behind the chief's desk. We then see Perry White struggling with a bout of insomnia, including counting cartoon sheep, and then treating himself to a feast of a giant turkey leg, clam chowder, and cigar. I'm going to stop my summary there. What the hell kind of opening was this? What was this?
When I saw the cartoon sheep, I'm like, I'm in trouble. We are all in trouble. And then it's just like, okay, so he went down and he ate a turkey leg. That's fine. And then had a 3-course meal. And then looked like he was really struggling with that cigar at the end. Like he wasn't liking that at all. And then he goes back to bed. Now, okay, so I'm going to fully admit, I've never woken up in the middle of the night and went and ate. That actually sounds like a terrible idea. One, you should never eat and then go to bed, because especially if you have acid reflux, it's just going to be terrible for you. But two, it's just not a good idea. I can't, he has like a whole meal, and then no wonder you're laying back down. You're probably so did you think you were going to get so full, like it was going to have like Thanksgiving dinner, and you were just going to get all sleepy afterwards? And a turkey leg and clam chowder? Like this whole opening is like, let's see what the leftovers in Perry's fridge are.
He had a fully stocked fridge.
Yes, he did.
I mean, that fridge was full, and he never mentions a wife. We don't see a wife with him, although not that we would be able to see them in the same bed anyway at this point in time. But it seems by all accounts, he's a bachelor. Yeah. If we ever get anything in later seasons to contradict that, but here at least this is what we have. But yeah, I mean, he's got this fully stocked fridge and just really goes to town with this spread here. It was the cartoon sheep really jumped out, but yeah, it was to your point. And I think we had the same takeaway with this, because I finished watching. I'm like, or honestly, even before that point, it's like, yeah, I think the episode came in short, and they were like, well, okay, we'll add this opening about him not being able to sleep, because it doesn't, other than, I guess that line at the end about going to sleep and maybe it was a dream or whatnot, but it really lifts right out of this episode. If this episode started with Perry walking into the Daily Planet and seeing the nameplate on his door being changed, you're good to go. So I really think this came in short. I mean, again, I could be totally wrong, but that's the way it plays for sure. Very odd.
I also want to know who shaves and then showers. That seems like a really weird order to do that in. Maybe I'm weird. I don't know.
Wait, no, that's what I shave and then I shower.
This is going to sound weird. I like to shower because then you're warm and your pores open up. It's easier to shave.
Fair enough. It's funny. This is a year. It's been years now, but I rarely, so rarely, will shave with an actual blade anymore. I switched to an electric razor years ago because I always kind of liked having this. I don't like to shave generally. It's annoying. But I always liked having a little bit of stubble. And so I like the electric razor. It's quick and you don't need the shaving cream and all that stuff. And so I'll do that. But then there's still, there will still be some little hair. So then we shower. So that's the order I follow. So that didn't bump me so much, but I hear you.
No, well, if I didn't have a face that treats electric razors like, me and electric razors don't get along. It dries my skin out. And this is not what people came here to listen to, but you brought it up. So,
I brought it up. It's
why I have to use a blade. So
listen, I'm sure that the gentlemen listening to this episode, they're reflecting right now on how they shave and what order they shave and shower in themselves.
That is going to be because this episode is forgettable in every other way. The main takeaway that everyone's going to have in the comments and on social media is shaving before or after showering.
Yes. All right, so I'll continue with my summary, but let me just say, for anyone who loves this episode, I think I got slightly more mileage out of it than you did. This is not the hill I'm gonna die on. I'm not gonna be a great defender of this episode, but I think maybe it didn't bother me, maybe quite so much. So we'll but treat this episode fairly as we always do. But we'll continue now with our summary. The next morning, Perry finds a custodian changing the nameplate on his door. Inside, Superman reminds Perry of his Boys' Day program idea, where the young men of the city spend the day in leadership positions. Jim decides to make the most of his time as editor and immediately runs a fabricated story about new evidence in the case of Legs Leamy, whose crew pulled off an armored car robbery years ago and is hours away from the statute of limitations running out. An agitated Perry hides out in Clark's office, and Clark surreptitiously turns on the intercom so he and Perry can listen in on Lois and Jim. Legs and his guys burst in with a machine gun, demanding to learn about Jim's evidence. Clark calms Perry down, assuring him that Legs wouldn't risk another charge and that even Superman wouldn't be able to help. Legs decides to wait out the clock. Lois points out that they're now guilty of a new crime, but Legs doesn't mind because he believes he'll be able to keep the money he stole, which he also happened to bring with him, drawing laughs from Lois and Jim. Lois outsmarts the goon with the machine gun and gets him to hand it over, after which she shoots all the bullets at the ceiling. However, Legs has a pistol. Later, while Legs and his crew divvy up their money, Lois and Jim recognize the serial number and remark that this is all the evidence the police need. Clark at last rushes into action as Superman, obtaining a new anesthetic from the hospital. He douses a towel with it and places it in the planet's air duct system. Everyone in Perry's office falls asleep. Later, Jim claims he got everyone to fall asleep through the power of suggestion by yawning, and the mayor and chief of police arrive to handcuff the criminals. So there we have it. So further thoughts, further impressions.
So at first I thought that they did the episode the way they did it was because they had, this is one of the episodes that they kind of ran out of money on. But then I thought, well, you had Perry's bedroom set, you had Perry's kitchen set, you had the set in the furnace, in the duct system. And then there was a scene with the criminals before they came to the thing. So I think I'm off on that one. There were no location shots. So you didn't really see anything outside. So maybe that's where they were trying to save the money, because the bulk of the episode takes place in Perry's office. This is the first episode that I noticed that Perry's couch is covered in plastic. 50s, I don't miss you. But the whole setup of this is fine. I mean, it's kind of funny. It's like Jimmy's going to be the editor for a day. I really tried to see if I am almost 100% certain that this was a plot in an issue of Jimmy Olsen like 2 or 3 times. But they wouldn't have done it at this point. This is still very early in the show. And while Jimmy was kind of a breakout of the show, I don't think his series started till 1954. So I don't think this is one of the cases where they were taking a story that they had previously told and were just adapting it into it. I'm sure, but like I said, I'm sure if I typed Jimmy Olsen boy editor, it would give me like 5 different times Mort Weisinger recycled that plot. The thing about this episode from like the 1,000-foot view is I don't know if there was like a draft of the script where this was all a dream, because it seemed like that's where they were going. And if that's the case, then everything being kind of ludicrous makes sense. But at the end, they do this like, well, you have to figure it out for yourself if this was a dream or not. And I'm like, I don't need that at this point, guys. I sat through this episode. I watched them spend an entire day with criminals in there, and Clark just sitting back going, oh, we don't want to break in there. It's like, why not? You're Superman.
Yes.
You would draw the fire.
So I agree. I'm also with you. It's like if you're going to have this opening with Perry and his insomnia and his feast, and we're gonna have some somewhat outlandish episode. You're gonna have this wild scene of Lois wielding the machine gun. Like, go all in, make it even weirder, and then make it a dream. Like, I commit to it. Nah, this didn't go far enough. This reminded me, to an extent, though again, didn't go far enough, but it reminded me of the Fly Hard episode from Lois and Clark and the Standoff episode from Superboy, right? Instances where there's a hostage situation in a confined, familiar space, and Clark is unable to use his powers, is unable to change into Superman or Superboy and save the day. The problem, though, I feel like those other shows did a vastly more effective job of accounting for why he had to remain as Clark. Here, the, in fairness to the show, Clark gives an explanation. He's like, well, Superman, basically saying Superman wouldn't be able to do much good, even if he was able to get, one of the gunmen, the Lois and Jimmy could still get hurt. But, and I think we probably had the same thought, that's all Superman does ever in all of these episodes.
Yeah.
Like, there are always instances where there's one or more gunmen and he just bursts in and does his thing. So they really needed to come up with some more believable reason why he couldn't spring into action. And then I think this could have worked more, but it just didn't connect.
Now, to say something positive about the show, I did really like seeing Jimmy and Lois like working the story.
Yeah.
Like they've got file folders and they're really looking through things. And I was just like, okay, that's cool. And to a certain extent, planting a false story in the paper to get the criminals to do something is not the most outlandish idea in television. So all of that checks out. It's when the hostage situation actually happens that and they're just there and they're still there and they're still there. And the whole thing, why did you bring the money? Why don't you have that stashed somewhere so that when you get out of jail in a year, because this guy's willing to, apparently he's not willing to go to jail for the robbery, but he's willing to go to jail for the kidnapping.
Yes.
This is the worst criminal of all time.
Well, because this new charge, the kidnapping charge or the gun charge, would only be a year or two versus the 20 or 30 years. And again, he stupidly, wrongly assumes that he would be able to keep this, which leads me to actually a positive that I have to say for this. This trio here, and I'll give a quick guest cast rundown. We have Herb Vigran as Legs Leamy. This might be a record. He appears once in each of the 6 seasons.
Oh, wow.
As a different character each
awesome.
time, but he makes an appearance every single season. Keith Richards is one of the other henchmen, and then Dick Rich, I assume not his real original name, as Toots. So this trio, they're so dumb, but I ultimately found it pretty amusing and entertaining. And right from the jump, because the first time we see them, they're reading this story that Jimmy has run in the paper. And what's this guy's name? I already forgot. Legs. Clearly not the best reader. He's reading it very, very haltingly. And then the other guy goes, "Boy, boss, you read real good." So that was great. And then the fact that it didn't occur to Legs that they might be able to run out the clock on the statute of limitations for the one crime, but now they're committing a new crime. Like, that didn't occur to him. It didn't occur to him that he wouldn't be able to keep the money. So all of that was pretty entertaining. So the fact that he would be dumb enough to bring the money, that was okay. But you know what was a bridge too far for me? They pulled off this robbery years ago. Why are they just now divvying up the money?
Yeah.
I mean, what is that?
I did like that. Okay, so again, to say something positive about I'm going to say actually 2 more things positive about the episode. I like that Jimmy tried to get them to turn against each other. Like the boss was doing the Bugs Bunny thing. It's like 1 for you, 1 for me, 2 for you, 1, 2 for me, 3 for you. And Jimmy clocks it. Lois getting the machine gun away from the guy was hilarious. Like, that was legitimately funny. Like, Noelle Neal, is sliding up to him. It's just like, oh, can I hold that? And then she just starts firing into the air so it empties. I hope nobody's in the floor above them. I'm assuming that Perry's on the top floor. If this was like a Zucker Brothers movie, like an airplane movie, you would have seen a body of the poor sanitation worker who was just on the floor above.
The poor custodian who changed the nameplate, like he had to go do some work upstairs. Oh, God.
And I will give it to the criminals. She empties the machine gun. She's like, okay, we got this. We can come in now. And he's got a handgun. And I'm like, okay. Not the dumbest criminal, apparently, because he thought ahead.
Yeah, I have to say another positive. And I've really not been harping on this season. Maybe in the beginning I did, but I've tried not to mention it all the time. But the shift in Lois Lane, and it goes beyond just the change in performer. It's the writing, the level of prominence of Lois in these episodes. She's far more of a minor character and a driver of the action than she was in the first season. But this bit with the machine gun was great. The way
Yeah.
she plays him and tricks him, like, oh, isn't it? I forget what she says, but like, isn't it amazing to be around all these guns? He's like, oh, we just have the one. He's like, oh, it's so heavy. I bet I couldn't even hold it. Like that was great. Like they
Yeah.
really gave her something to do, and that image. I feel like if you search Lois Lane or at least Noel Neal Lowe, I feel like that's an image that comes up a lot of her with with that machine. It's a wild image, but it was very effective. I liked her in that a lot.
Yeah, like this is a Lois that's a little more take charge. She wasn't waiting for Superman to burst through the door. She was gonna try to take care of the situation herself. The fact that the other guy had another gun, she didn't think that far ahead. So she's playing chess, they're playing checkers, but he's still like king me. So
Hey, speaking of Lois, this is like a throwaway line that I think we only hear over the intercom, but Jim makes a remark to the criminals about Lois's etiquette column. So that's a thing?
well, I mean, from her first appearance, she was the sob sister at the paper. So
Yeah.
despite the fact that she's still a reporter, I get. So this is what I'm thinking, because it's the 50s. She's a woman in a field dominated by men. She has to do extra things to make as much money as everybody else. So her salary is not as high as Clark's, maybe even Jimmy's. So she has to supplement that with like her etiquette column, and that gives her a little more bump in pay.
Yes. No, I totally go with that. I think that tracks. Well, it's funny too because obviously Clark is older, more mature than Jim, but in terms of experience, Jim has more. I mean, unless Clark
Yeah.
had acquired some journalism experience on that long walk that we saw in Superman on Earth, which I don't really think is the case. I mean, I think the intention really is he shows up and that's his entryway into this field. So Jim's got one
Well,
over on him.
he's not the first Clark Kent to do that.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. But it's just funny in terms of Clark. He's so he's so experienced, but
In fact, I'm thinking about this. I think Dean Cain is the only live action Superman to ever have journalistic experience before he goes and tries to get his job at the Daily Planet.
yes, yeah. I mean,
Wow.
unless you count,
I'm running through it.
I mean, Clark did work at the Torch in high school in Smallville, but that's pretty fleeting. No, you're right. That's a great point. Yeah, in live action, yeah.
Because Kirk Allen just walked up and asked for a job. George Reeves just walks up and asks for a job. Christopher Reeve gets hired because he's polite and can type fast. I don't know how Henry Cavill got hired. That is something that they do not go into, and there's really no need to because they just wanted him in that role.
I assume Lois really paved the way. I feel like Lois really went to bat for him because again, she knows his whole deal.
She gets introduced to him as if they're
true.
meeting for the first time.
Yeah, then you're right. That blows out my theory. Yeah.
So, and I'm not trying to be pedantic. I'm really not. But the last line of that film is "Welcome to the planet." Thank you, Lois. And then the Hans Zimmer theme kicks in as the S fills the screen. So, but
no,
yeah,
right,
I mean, I guess we're not sure about because we don't see Tyler Hoechlin's Clark doing any kind of journalistic training before he goes, because he was like he was like Christopher Reeve. He was a space dad for years, running in the Arctic, probably listening to I'm just going to put it out there, probably listening to Hearts on Fire as he's running.
That's the only way to train, man.
I'm telling you right now, that Clark Kent ran to the top of a mountain in the Arctic and yelled Drago at one point. I'm telling you this right now.
No arguments here. No arguments at all.
I
It's
know I can
amazing.
always slip in Rocky 4 stuff and that you'll appreciate it.
I'm there. It's only a matter of time before I do a Rocky podcast. It's only
Yeah,
that. It's
I'm telling you, and you've got it's not that like you only have 5 movies now. You've got Rocky Balboa and you've got the 3 Creed films.
yeah. Oh well, it's coming at some point. Now, my other there are a few more very specific things I want to mention, but I think this is the biggest picture question I have about this episode, which is a burger a sandwich? Because Jim calls out for sandwiches and Perry brings burgers.
Okay. Have you ever read or listened to Tom DeHaven's It's Superman?
So I attempted a Patreon episode on it and I didn't really connect with it, but one of my guests just loved it and he talked all about it. I do intend to finish it at some point, but right now all I can say is that I tried and it didn't work for me, but I'll give it another shot.
Okay. So I'm not bringing it up to talk about like the thing. What I am bringing up is Tom DeHaven did a lot of research into that time period. So they mentioned celebrities and musicians and actors and all that I literally had to sit there with like Google to figure out, who these people were. But at one point, and they say it not at one point, sorry, at several times, they say we sent out for hamburger sandwiches. So I'm thinking that up until like the 60s, probably, because the 60s is when McDonald's and chains and all that really get it. I think a hamburger was thought of more of as a sandwich than a meal in and of it, than a separate thing entirely. Like it's in the sandwich family because it's a piece of meat and cheese and stuff and onions between 2 pieces of bread.
It's funny because I know I presented the question seriously, but really I was more kidding around. You gave a legit answer and I appreciate it. And I think that's totally right. Well, it's funny. The reason I think why it jumped out at me so much is that I don't know if you watched The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, but he has this segment, the Colbert questionnaire, where he will ask this series of questions to guests periodically. And one of them is, what is the best sandwich? And from time to time, one of the guests will pose the question, well, is a hot dog a sandwich or is a burger a sandwich? And it's my view is I feel like, yes, if we're thinking about it in terms of meat between bread, then yes. But I feel like something like a hot dog, like a hamburger, it has its own designation that supersedes the sandwich label. I've clearly given this a lot of thought. So I'm watching the show late at night. I'm like, oh yeah. So,
well, I'm glad you brought it up because it's something like when they brought out the hamburgers, I'm like, oh, this must have been a time period where it was still considered a sandwich. And here's the thing. It was for dinner. So is like a ham on rye, like a lunch sandwich. And this is a dinner sandwich because it's a burger. Like, yes, we are devoting way too much real estate to this question, but now it's all I can think about. And, yes, you bring up the hot dog a sandwich. I have seen screaming arguments over that, literally screaming arguments over that.
Hey, audience,
tell
us what you think.
Passionate.
Well, I will move on from this sandwich business, but let me ask you the Colbert question. What is the best sandwich to you?
Oh, pumpernickel with lemon and bologna, American cheese, lettuce and tomato, and mayonnaise. Miracle Whip preferred, but regular mayo will do. And if someone's out there, like, there's 2 people who heard the term lemon and bologna. There are people like, what's that? And then there's people that grew up near Pennsylvania. Specifically the eastern part of Pennsylvania.
I'll be honest. At first I thought that's what but then I thought I misheard and you said a little bit of bologna.
No, lemon and bologna.
Okay. All right. On, man.
It's basically, for those who don't know, it's kind of a salami, but it's not as spicy. But it still has a bit of a kick to it. And especially if you're in the Pennsylvania Dutch country, it's a big thing. So
right on. For myself, I go Turkey Club, classic Turkey Club.
Okay.
I'm a big fan. So that's where I land.
Are you a crisp bacon guy or do you like it a little chewier for the sandwich?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't feel that strongly.
we
Generally, I do like it
we are
crispy.
asking the deep questions this episode.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I would say crispy, but I don't mind if it's a little bit on the other side for that sandwich in particular.
Because I feel with a club, you want it to be crispy because you don't want to have to bite to get to get the sandwich away from you. You want to be able to bite into it and then chew. You don't want to have to work at it.
You know, after this conversation, I really could go for a turkey club. I could go
Yeah.
for a turkey leg, a little clam chowder, finish off with a nice cigar. Oh my goodness. Also, yeah,
I do approve of a club. Though with me for clubs, I need the bread to be a little thicker.
okay.
But that's just again my personal preference.
This is so random, but when else would this ever come up? There's I love the Turkey Club, and there's a diner in my hometown that we'll still go to periodically, and I love their Turkey Club there. But separate from the sandwich itself, they have the best coleslaw I've ever had in my entire life, and it's the sort of thing where I enjoy other coleslaws because I think I've just accepted in my head that I'm never going to have coleslaw as good as that. And I don't know. I think it's probably the first coleslaw I ever had because we're going there from when I was a little kid. But so maybe that's why, but I don't know. It's just every time I take a bite of coleslaw, I'm like, that's good. Not as good as the Fountain Diner. So anyway.
You mentioned diners, and one of the things about living in the South is that we don't have diners. We have Waffle Houses, which is not a diner. I'm just going to put that out there. Waffle House is good for two things. It's 2:00 in the morning and you're hungry and you want to hang out with your friends. And it's the indication of how bad the tropical storm that's coming. Because if Waffle House closes, you know it's going to be bad.
Gotcha. No diners though. That's a bummer.
Yeah, no, but when I grew up in PA, man, it was like you threw a rock, you hit a diner.
Yeah. No, they're clutch for sure. This is minor, but for us,
this is like an episode of Seinfeld.
I guess it shows like what we felt about the episode. That was
What's the deal with bacon clubs?
No, I'll bring it back to the episode. There's the nameplate, right? It says, I love how they're changing the nameplate for this one day. They're really committing to this.
Committed to the bit. So
also this, I'm being a little bit of a jerk here, but do you buy that this Superman, he goes to meetings with city leaders and proposes something like the Boys' Day program?
Mm-hmm.
Do you? I mean, does that feel in keeping with this Superman?
I really felt it should have been a Clark thing, because we have discussed on several episodes The Secret Life of Clark Kent. That is the digital only comic that I think they should really go into if they're going to. But it would make more sense for Clark to be standing there. Don't you remember, Chief? We went. You had me go with you. We talked to the mayor. And yeah, for Superman, like they struggled to get Superman in this episode.
Yeah,
this is not quite the green glow of home that you have to show like a random thing at the beginning, because there is absolutely no more of Dean Cain in the costume throughout the rest of that episode, which it didn't need, but I'm just saying they struggle. I would bet, like, if you dug into it, like originally it was Clark Kent, and then someone's like, well, we don't have Superman really hardly in this episode at all. Put him in that scene. He's the one that talked to the mayor.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I just bring it up because one of the things we talked about is that in this show, Kent is the guy. He's the main driver here, and it's Superman only shows up when he's absolutely necessary. And even something like The Clown Who Cried, which I really did not like that episode, but even there, it's like they have to beg Clark to get Superman to come. It's just interesting where, it's something like that. This whole charity, like you would expect. All right, maybe Superman makes an appearance right from the jump, but it's really Clark handling it most of the way through.
But if it was a dream, it would make more sense that it was Superman.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But with the nameplate, it says James J. Olsen.
J. Olsen.
Yeah, not B for Bartholomew.
No, it's got to be Bartholomew or wait, though. What was the middle name of the first Jimmy on Smallville? Because it wasn't Bartholomew, because that was his little brother.
It was Joe. Well, he was Henry James Olsen.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So see, that just shows how much I paid attention when I was watching those seasons. Um,
I'll never forget that. We've covered that on another show. I'll leave it at that. But
I have a very fun memory from when that happened that I won't go into, but my friend Big Honkin' Steve from Starkville's House of L remembers it.
yeah, any Smallville fan, I
So
think we're haunted by that.
yeah, yeah, it is one of those. I love that like every Superman iteration has that one thing that, like rich or poor, Democrat or Republican, everybody can come together. It's just like, hey, what do you think of Doomsday in season 8?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're never gonna hear somebody like best version of Doomsday ever.
I know, which is hard. There's so much I like about it. It was mostly just the payoff.
Mm.
But anyway,
Mm.
but yeah, here we get James J. Olsen. There's also what appears to be a flubbed line when Jim comes out of his office because Perry sees the nameplate being changed. He calls for Kent. Interesting. Immediately he's calling for Clark. Lois shows up and he's like, "Is your name Kent?" And then Jim enters and he's like, "What's all the shooting about?" Right? I feel like he says shooting instead of shouting.
Well, if it was a flub line, they weren't going to retake it.
No,
So
no,
I mean,
we learned that after Jiminy, right? There were not
Yeah.
no time for another take.
Yeah. So it was probably a flub line, and they're just like, it sounds okay. The kids aren't going to care. At no point did Mort Wessinger and Whitney Ellsworth go, about 70 years from now, two guys are going to be sitting on a Saturday evening dissecting this episode while also talking about sandwiches.
Fair enough. I do have to say, though, hands down, my favorite line from this episode, and I think what makes this episode worthwhile to me, is when we get to this business with Lois and Jim recognizing the serial number from this money, and Jim saying to Legs and his crew, "Whoa, this is all the evidence that they need to haul you in." And then we cut to Perry and Clark listening in on this, and Perry goes, "Why doesn't he just ask them to shoot him and get it over with?" It's like that was great. That's the line of the episode for me. The whole thing was worth it for
I'll
that.
agree with that. I'll totally agree with that. I was a little disappointed that we get to the end and the cops show up and it's not Inspector Henderson. I want again, this is why I'm thinking it was a dream, because Inspector Henderson didn't show up. We just get two random people we have never seen before.
So this is really interesting. When I was looking up the guest cast on IMDb, I swear it credited a boy mayor and a boy chief of police. I don't know if there was something that was cut. I know sometimes we do run into situations where there are like different versions of episodes floating around. I don't know if we're in that territory, but it would have been quite amusing if the boy mayor and the boy chief of police showed up. So that would
have been great.
So that would have been a ton of fun. Also, wait a minute. I think I can't believe I haven't brought this up before now. This is we're 35 minutes into this, and I think this is the biggest question about this episode. Put aside all the hamburger talk. Mm-hmm. Is Jim a boy? How old is Jimmy Olsen? We talk about this all the time. How old is he supposed to be? I feel like he's aged out of this Boys' Day program.
There is an episode, I forget which season. I think it's a black and white episode, though. Or is it a color? Where it has to do with voting. And I think Jim specifically, it's been so long since I've seen that episode, and I only watched it once. But my memory tells me that he says, I can't vote because I'm not old enough. And at that point, the voting age was 21, I believe. Because that got changed in during the Vietnam War, because people were like, okay, 18-year-olds can go over and die, but they can't, vote in an election. And it was changed. It also depends on what they call a boy. And that's the other weird thing, is because it's the 50s. A 14-year-old working like an assembly line job probably would have been kosher at this point. So
Yeah.
yeah, I wow, I didn't clock that, but now it's all I'm going to be thinking about with this episode.
Well, I think
Is
that's
why is he in the boys program?
I think this is the biggest problem. I mean, look, so we haven't come up to that episode with him mentioning voting yet. Well, I'll keep an eye
Okay.
out for it. I'm firmly in the camp. There's never any reference to him being in school. I have to imagine he's 18. He's out of high school. That's
Yeah.
my take on this. I feel like he's aged out of whatever Superman had in mind for this Boys Day program. But again,
Because
we go with it.
He was super young on the radio show. Like he was like 12 or 13 years old, I believe. Because when they get up to one of the serials, he's like the same age as a high schooler, but he's working full time because his dad's dead. So, and Jack Larson does not look like a boy. He doesn't look like an old man, but he's
Yeah.
he's not a teenager.
No. Oh, look, again, I watched 10 years of Smallville. I'm very familiar with, with this business. But, this was the other thing I wanted to say. Tying this all together, we talked about how that the opening of the episode like really feels like they were short and they needed to add something. Mm-hmm. Similarly, at the end, I wish I had timed it, but it felt like an eternity of the police chief handcuffing those guys. It felt like we were on that shot forever.
and here's my spending way too many years watching like Law and Order and all that. The fact that he didn't kick the gun away, like away from where one of them could have grabbed it and shot everyone in the room. I'm like, this is the shoddiest police. Like, how is this? Like, is this an elected position? Because that doesn't look like a guy that was a cop.
Yeah. No, exactly. Oh, but this is what I wanted. You mentioned Henderson. I need to, before we get to the end of the season, I am going to tally up how many episodes Henderson was actually in season 2, because it's been very, very light on Henderson. There were a lot of it. And there are episodes where it's like, oh, it would make sense for Henderson to be the guy here, and we're not seeing him.
Yeah, I know at one point, I don't know what season, but I've read the story that at one point the HUAC people came to talk to him, and the cast like stood up for him. So I'm wondering if this is the second season. So it's what, you said 19, what was the air date on this again?
February 13th, 1954.
Okay, so yeah, you're getting kind of into that whole thing. So maybe that's what was going on, but I don't have like anything confirmed on that, but that could be why he wasn't available. Is like they were like, we're going to wait till that sorts itself out before we have him back.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, that makes sense. Again, I pulled up the IMDb list again, and so there's no mayor or police chief credit, only boy mayor and boy police chief, but they were not meant to be the boy. I mean, it was very clearly established, and they're even announced as the mayor and the police chief. So, again, IMDb is not, it's not gospel necessarily.
I get that we're trying to do like this civic thing where we're going to make a boy the mayor for the day, and he gets to sit and like it's all a photo op. I doubt they were going to send I mean, it's 1954, but still, they're not going to send a boy to go in to handle when people. But maybe because he did the work. Like, why is he handcuffing them to each other?
I know.
And here's the other. Okay, so now you have me thinking about it, and it had me remember who lays down on another human being on the floor.
I know. I guess it was more just they passed out sort of thing, as opposed to like.
No, that guy looks like he was tucking himself in. That last dude looked like he was like, I know this is happening. So, but yeah, it's like at this point in the script, it's just like, okay, we're done. We've stretched this out as far as it's going to go. So, but yeah, them collapsing took forever. them coming in and getting cuffed took forever, and them doing the little thing at the end took forever. So I'm just assuming that this script, like you said, came in short, and they were doing everything in their power to stretch it out to the 26 minutes.
Agreed wholeheartedly. And I, maybe this will sound nitpicky, but it is a genuine question. If the whole idea is for, photo op aside, but if the whole idea is for the youth of the city to learn, should Perry White have not like actually been there guiding him? Like this whole notion of, okay, just take my office and I'll be down in the city room. You would think this was an opportunity for mentorship, to actually show him what it takes to be editor, as opposed to just giving him the keys to the kingdom and letting him have full control over what they run in the paper.
Yeah, he actually calls down and has them hold the plate on page 1. And I know that grizzled guy in that department was looking at the phone like, I got to listen to this kid as he's working on his third stogie of the day. Again, headcanon, this was all a dream. This was a nightmare that Perry had after eating a turkey leg and clam chowder and having a cigar.
I'm with, I know. Maybe that is the way to look at this. And I think that is probably, again, how the episode should have gone. And they could have gone even wackier with it. But yeah, I think that's a fair reading of it. Before we give our Fedora rating, is there anything else you want to say about this? Anything we didn't talk about?
No, I feel like if I keep talking about it, I'm just going to keep saying bad things. And again, even when, toxic negativity and toxic positivity are two things that exist. So I'm not trying to be like super positive, but I'm also not trying to be super negative. So yeah, I'm tapping out. I'm going to go for a sandwich.
Yeah. Yeah. We know exactly what kind, I guess.
Yeah, there you go.
Overall, again, it was a ton of fun to talk about, and it's amusing and entertaining. I think had they just come up with a better reason for why Clark couldn't change into Superman, and I think had they just beefed up the opening, right, or just added some other dynamic just to kind of...
Like if Clark was in the room with them and being held at gunpoint, that would have, but then you have Perry going and doing the whole thing of knocking them out.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, that would have been, because I think that would have been a lot more believable. But in any event, now the moment of truth on a scale of 1 to 5 fedoras. How many do you give Jimmy Olsen, boy editor?
I'm going to be kind. I'm going to say 3. You brought up enough points that I'm like, because originally I was going to give it a 2, but you brought up some things. I was like, that works. So I'm going to give it a 3.
All right. Just like the last time you were on, I'm a half a fedora below you. I'm going to go 2.5 for this.
Okay.
Yeah, 2.5. I think that's fair for this one. It's interesting too, because I'm glad, like we've talked about, I'm glad that Jimmy and Perry, because this really is, Perry gets a lot of play in this. So I love these characters getting the spotlight.
Yeah.
Again, I wish it were a stronger vehicle for that, but I'm glad that they do that, and so that goes a long way. But listen, I really had so much fun, so I thank you for your time. And what would you like to share with folks about what you have going on?
Again, if this is airing while the final season of Superman and Lois is going on, Superman Homepage Live every Wednesday night at 10:30. SupermanHomepageLive.com/live. Steve Eunice, who is the grand poobah of the Superman homepage, and Mark Lax and I talk about everything in the world of Superman that's going on. A lot of that has to do with Superman and Lois at the moment. Things on the Fortress of Baileytude front are kind of quiet at the moment because of things just happening in the background. But I am furiously working on stuff for the new year. And once the second or third week of January starts clicking, there's going to be new episodes of It All Comes Back to Superman Series 2 that are going to be all about leading up to the James Gunn movie next year. But yeah, fortressofbaileytude.com.
Awesome. Well, everybody check it out. Michael, thank you so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure. And make sure you come back next week for another episode breakdown. Until then, remember, only Superman can do super things. This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show, too. Be sure to check out our sister podcast series, Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey, a weekly exploration of Superman's vast 85-year mythology, available wherever you get podcasts. Please join us on social media, become a patron, and subscribe, rate, and review today. Links are in the show notes. Thank you all.